On our newscast tonight, South Korea's rival political parties lock horns once again over what should be done about the transcript of the 2007 Inter-Korean Summit that's gone missing. The ruling party wants the prosecution to get involved and is suggesting that the Roh Moo-hyun administration may have destroyed the document. It's time for Korea and the U.S. to discuss how much of the bill each side should foot for the U.S. troop station on the peninsula. Military officials of both sides will meet in Seoul this week to talk the issue over. And the operator of Japan's crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant admits for the first time that contaminated water is leaking into the Pacific Ocean. Elevated levels of radioactive substances were detected in groundwater of an observation well at the port of the plant earlier this month. These and more on Early Edition at 6.
It is 5 a.m. in New York, 10 in London, and 6 on a Tuesday evening here in Seoul. Welcome to Early Edition at 6. I'm Moon Geon-young.
And I'm Daniel Chen. Thank you for tuning in. We start with the upcoming defense talks. Core subject, how much?
The 6-year-old South Korea-U.S. military alliance remains firm in the face of North Korea's continued missile and nuclear threats.
But military officials from the two countries have some important decisions to make this year, and the two allies don't yet see eye to eye on a number of issues. Our Defense Ministry correspondent Han Da-eun starts us off.
Military officials of South Korea and the U.S. will meet in Seoul on Wednesday and Thursday to hold the second round of talks on working out how much Seoul should pay Washington next year to help cover the cost of keeping U.S. troops stationed here. The cost-sharing agreement was first signed in 1991. The agreement has been renewed 7 times over the years, but the money talk doesn't look like it'll be smooth sailing this year. South Korean officials relayed the maximum amount of shared military spending Seoul can afford during their first round of talks in Washington, but U.S. officials reportedly pressed for a higher amount, citing increasing threats from North Korea. Although the details were not disclosed, South Korea is known to have suggested some $800 million it had paid annually, plus an additional raise, taking into account the increased North Korean threat and rising consumer prices in South Korea. $800 million will account for about 40 to 45% of the total military cost sharing. The final price agreement will likely be settled by the end of the year after a few more rounds of talks. Another important decision South Korea and the U.S. have to make this year is the timing of the transfer of wartime operational control. The two sides had initially agreed to hand over operational control to South Korea in December 2015. But with the increasing risk of provocations from North Korea, many are raising the opinion that it should be delayed until South Korea is ready to defend itself on its own. Seoul's defense ministry has refused to make an official comment on the issue, but has said it'll carry on discussions with the U.S. at the Security Consultative Meeting set for October in Seoul. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea, the United States, and China took their first step on Monday towards coordinating policies on denuclearizing North Korea. During the so-called Track 1.5 meeting held in Seoul, experts from the three countries, as well as government officials, exchanged views on how to resume the stalled 6-party denuclearization talks. The three countries reportedly offered up diverse opinions on the effectiveness of the sanctions on the North and the possibility of changes in China's North Korea policy. Seoul and Washington reportedly maintained that more pressure should be applied on the North through a balance of sanctions and dialogue, while China stressed the need for a swift resumption of the 6-party talks. The meeting was conducted behind closed doors.
2 North Koreans carrying diplomatic passports have been caught by Mongolia's customs office while trying to smuggle large amounts of medical goods. The UB Post, a Mongolian English daily, reports that the 2 individuals were caught during an inspection on an international train connecting Mongolia's capital Ulaanbaatar and Beijing. Some 1,000 boxes of injection drugs, along with brown powdered medicine, bear spleen products, and alcoholic beverages used for medicinal purposes were found in their luggage. Whether they are actual North Korean diplomats is not yet known, but a criminal police investigation has been launched by Mongolian authorities.
Well, it's definitely hot potato here in the nation after concluding that the original transcript of the 2007 Inter-Korean Summit does not exist at the National Archives of Korea. South Korea's rival political parties are locking horns over what the next step should be.
The parties want to check the transcript to see whether late former President Roh Moo-hyun offered to give up the de facto maritime sea border to North Korea during the summit. Our political correspondent Kim Yeon-ji reports.
The rival parties have concluded that the 2007 Inter-Korean Summit dialogue transcript is nowhere to be found at the National Archives. The ruling Saenuri Party argues the issue must now be handed over to the prosecution. The ruling party has suggested that the liberal Roh Moo-hyun government destroy the original transcript and fail to transfer it to the archives.
The missing transcript is a serious matter. The prosecution has to fully uncover how the presidential record ended up disappearing.
The main opposition Democratic Party has begun attacking the ruling party and current and previous conservative governments. DP floor leader Chun Byung-hun has raised the possibility of tampering by the ruling party, saying influential ruling party figures and National Intelligence Service Chief Nam Jae-jun had implied the transcripts would not be found at the National Archives.
Influential figures from previous and current governments have leaked the idea that the transcripts would not be found at the National Archives. Such comments could not have been made unless they verified the existence of the records illegally in advance or unless they were involved in damaging the records.
Meanwhile, select DP lawmakers on Tuesday made an attempt to review materials related to the 2007 Inter-Korean Summit, which the National Archives had transferred to the National Assembly earlier, but failed because of opposition from the ruling party. The DP says it's important to review them to verify what President Roh said about the western maritime border between the two Koreas. But the ruling Saenuri Party says it's not meaningful to review the supplementary materials alone. No exit strategy is on the horizon, and the political wrangling is likely to grow fiercer in the coming days. This issue is also keeping a probe into the intelligence agency's alleged interference in last year's presidential election from coming up to the surface. Kim Yeon-ji, Arirang News.
So it is final. Lawmakers searching for the transcript of late former President Roh Moo-hyun's 2007 Inter-Korean Summit dialogue with then North Korean leader Kim Jong-il have come to this conclusion. We just can't seem to find it.
Well, amid the current political feud over former President Roh Moo-hyun's exact words at the talks in Pyongyang 6 years ago, the lawmakers reported the absence of the summit transcript to the House Steering Committee Monday afternoon.
Now, given that the search for the file resulted from a dispute between the rival parties over whether the late president offered to make concessions on the Northern Limit Line, which is the de facto inter-Korean border in the West Sea, Monday's findings are expected to bring about further turmoil.
And to give us some perspective on this seemingly complicated event, we're now joined live by Dr. Hong Sang-pil, professor at Yonsei School of Law in Seoul. Dr. Hong, welcome back to the program.
Well, it's very good to be here again.
Now, Dr. Hong, let's try taking this case step by step. Now, if I'm correct, there's a piece of legislation in this country called the Presidential Record Law, and which deals with the management and the custody of presidential records. Now,
exactly.
What is this law, and under this law, how should sensitive document like an inter-Korean Summit dialogue be kept and managed?
I think the whole analysis should come into the area of common sense. I think President Roh Moo-hyun was actually the first president who saw the importance of keeping presidential materials in a very protected way. And so under this law, which was made in 2007, the presidential record, whether it's related to his commission of public duty or even his private activities, I mean, all of the materials should be kept in a certain way, and it should not be open. And you can place a protection period for 15 years or 30 years. But there are exceptions, but exceptions are not really expected to be made in this way. So, and opening up this sort of Pandora's box will have great danger of placing a very dangerous precedent over diplomacy, over national political affairs as well.
Okay, now there's quite a mystery. There's a lot of mystery surrounding the missing document at the moment. Also, making things worse is the fact that the NIS is involved with. This is just one of the two produced by that very troubled government body at the moment. There are some possible scenarios at the moment. In your opinion, what are some of the more viable ones?
Well, I mean, this is what most people talk about these days, and it also, falls into the category of common sense. First, President Roh Moo-hyun did not hand in the materials, and his people did not hand in materials in a proper way. So it's not, now you cannot find it in the National Archives of Korea. And second, there could be complicated security things on these files. So you cannot really press the right button to find it. So there could have been a very complicated secret codes or something on it. And third, somebody could have destroyed it, or somebody could have damaged it. And now the DP, the opposition party, claims that the former Lee Myung-bak government could have damaged the materials, and they claim that they found a couple of misapproaches to these files as well.
But how plausible is that? Because if I'm correct, what the ruling party is arguing and what the opposition is arguing, there seems to be not likely of a reason for the Lee Myung-bak administration to destroy this document.
Yeah, I mean, the manager of Presidential National Archives actually had claimed that, clarified that, well, it is quite natural under certain circumstances to make approaches to the materials. And then, yeah, I mean, common sense, well, I personally think, I mean, Lee Myung-bak, the government, for example, did not really have ample reasons to make a damage on these materials as well. And not only that, Lee Myung-bak's government, but other governments as well.
All right, so now that both parties have declared that they can't find it, they cannot locate this transcript, who will be held accountable from now on? I mean, where are we headed next with this disappearing act, if you will?
I think the gist of the matter is that there is a law, the Presidential Record Law, and if somebody damages or conceals and does some misappropriate conduct on it, then he or she could be, have danger of being subjected to 10 years in imprisonment and 30 million finement as well. So now we have found that there's no materials found. So somebody has to be held accountable for these acts as well. But I don't know. I mean, two rival parties accuse each other for having done bad things, and the ruling party says the prosecution team should be established. And the DP says a special prosecution team should be established to make an investigation. So I think this is a serious matter, and it should be dealt with in a proper way. Otherwise, it can set a very, very bad precedent in Korean politics.
Right. Some might have thought that the source of the trouble being gone might help clear things up, but unfortunately it's making matters worse.
Yeah.
We're actually fueling the fire between the rival parties.
Exactly.
We do anticipate a lot more trouble brewing on both sides. In the nation's political realm, what do you think is the best strategy out of this mess for both parties?
Well, I personally hope there has to be a sort of lump sum settlement between ruling party, between two parties in the question. And now the DP says we should now look into the pre and post summit talk materials, which means they want to extend actually the discussion to that, and they want to move it to the next level. But I don't think, and many people do not share the view that this is a wise move. And so if this type of political fight continues in the political realm, then I can easily guess people will really have fatigue about politics, and then even the ruling party should not be exempted from taking those political responsibility as well. So I think this is time to make a certain conclusion and move to the next level of political boom. And everyone in this country now says economy is the most important matter. So I think this is time to pay more attention to other matters as well.
Right, because even as we speak, there are legislations and bills lying around that needs to be processed by these lawmakers to improve the lives of ordinary people here in Korea. All right, Dr. Hong Sung-pil, professor at Yonsei School of Law, thank you so much for today. We appreciate it.
It is my pleasure. Thank you.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with heroes and experts to help you understand the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Gun-young and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
Now shifting gears to the economy, Korea's import prices rose by 2013 has not been a banner year for Boeing. The year started with the grounding of the company's 787 Dreamliner fleet due to problems and continued this month with other aviation incidents. Well, the latest occurred Monday in New York as a passenger jet came to screeching halt at one of the airports there after its landing gear collapsed. Arirang News' Kim Ji-yeon reports.
At least 8 people were wounded in New York on Monday after the landing gear of a Southwest Airlines Boeing 737 collapsed upon arrival at LaGuardia Airport. After the jet skidded to a halt on its nose, those on board had to exit on emergency slides. There were 150 people on the plane that originated in Nashville, Tennessee, and most of the passengers' injuries were to the back and neck. An investigation has been launched by U.S. authorities to determine what went wrong. The incident in New York was the second involving a Boeing jetliner in as many days. Another bound for London from Islamabad made an emergency landing at Moscow's Sheremetyevo International Airport on Sunday. This after the pilot of the Pakistan International Airlines Boeing 777 reported a problem with one of its 2 engines. It's the same kind of a plane, a Boeing 777, that crashed earlier this month in San Francisco, killing 3 people and injuring more than 150 others. A spokesman for Boeing and United Technologies Corporation said that they are investigating all the recent incidents. The year has been full of setbacks for Boeing. Its Dreamliner series was grounded for 3.5 months earlier this year due to problems with its battery system. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
TEPCO, the operator of Japan's crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, has for the first time admitted that radioactive water is seeping into the Pacific Ocean. But it's claiming that the environmental impact will be limited. For more, here's our Jin-ju.
The operator of Japan's Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, Tokyo Electric Power Corporation, has for the first time admitted that contaminated water is leaking into the Pacific Ocean. This is after the plant operator reported earlier this month that elevated levels of radioactive substances were detected in groundwater samples taken from an observation well at the port of the nuclear power plant. TEPCO had previously denied that radioactive water was seeping into the sea, but acknowledged the problem after the country's nuclear watchdog ordered the plant operator to investigate the possibility earlier this month. Company spokesman Masayuki Ono apologized for causing concern and told reporters that officials believe there could have been a leak as underground water levels in the suspected areas fluctuate in accordance with tide movements and rainfall. However, he stressed that the leak has stayed near the plant inside the bay and very little has spread into the ocean. Ono added that high radiation levels in underground and seawater samples are believed to have come from initial leaks after the crisis. The Japanese media reported Monday that TEPCO is currently taking measures to solidify the underground structure along the coastline to prevent further leaks. Meanwhile, TEPCO has also admitted that the number of plant workers facing an increased risk of thyroid cancer because of exposure to dangerous levels of radiation is 11 times higher than the figure it reported to the World Health Organization last year. Jin-ju, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories, the U.S. Congress has given a green light, albeit with hesitation, to President Obama's plans to supply Syrian rebels with arms. The Pentagon says, however, deeper U.S. involvement in the Syrian conflict will come with higher costs and significant risks. Our Hwang Sung-hee has the details.
The path has been cleared for U.S. President Barack Obama to sign off on the delivery of arms to Syrian rebels. In a statement on Monday, the chairman of the House of Representatives Intelligence Committee, Mike Rogers, said that there was a consensus that Congress can, quote, move forward with what the administration's plans and intentions are in Syria, consistent with committee reservations. Rogers said that congressional concerns about the weapons falling into the wrong hands had eased slightly, but noted that there were still strong reservations within the committee, especially about the chances of success. The White House had announced in June that it wanted to send arms to vetted opposition groups to help them topple President Bashar al-Assad. In a letter to the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee on Monday, U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Martin Dempsey laid out 5 military options for doing so. These included bombing targets inside the country to deploying thousands of ground forces to secure chemical weapon sites. Dempsey said such moves would lead to much deeper involvement by U.S. forces in Syria, but added it would come with high costs and significant risks. More than 100,000 people have been killed since the crisis in Syria broke out in March 2011, when a peaceful protest against the dictatorship of al-Assad turned into a full-blown civil war. 황성희, Arirang News.
Now, this Saturday marks the 60th anniversary of the signing of the Korean Armistice Agreement, which brought a ceasefire on the Korean peninsula. Various events are taking place across the nation to mark the occasion, one of which kicked off at the National Museum of Korean Contemporary History on this Tuesday. Our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won was there.
The National Museum of Korean Contemporary History is now hosting 60 years after the armistice to commemorate the anniversary of the agreement that put a stop to the 37-month-long war that broke out in 1950 when North Korea invaded the South in a surprise attack. An estimated 2 million people were killed during the war, and most of the infrastructure on the peninsula was devastated. The exhibition displays rare pictures of the war, confidential documents, copies of the armistice agreement, and more.
As a history major, I'm really interested in history anyway, but it was really cool to see the history of the Korean War from the Korean perspective. The exhibition was really informative, really simple, really clear, and I feel like I know a lot more about Korean history now.
The exhibition was very informative and helpful for Westerners, who I don't think we have the same sort of collective knowledge of the Korean War, and it was very helpful for us and very easy for us to understand this obviously very important part of history.
The exhibition also shows how rapidly South Korea has developed economically and democratically following the destruction of war in just 6 decades.
This exhibition aims to teach Korea's younger generations, those who didn't experience the war, about the pains of the conflict and help them realize just how precious freedom and peace is.
Visitors can also watch rare video footage of the demilitarized zone that separates South and North Korea. The exhibition is free and open to the public and runs through September 1st. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And now for the latest updates on the monsoon, we go over to our Hannah Kim at the Weather Center. Hannah, I understand the rain clouds from our monsoon front are currently making their way from the west towards the central provinces, right?
That's right, Daniel. We still have some lingering rain in some parts of Korea, and it's actually very foggy and misty on the roads, so you need to be careful on your evening commutes.
Right, and Hannah, you were telling me that we have more rain coming our way, especially tomorrow at dawn. And you told us earlier that the monsoon rain will bring up to 30 millimeters of rainfall per hour.
Right, which is why we may have another 150 millimeters of precipitation in some parts of the Gyeonggi and Gangwon provinces until tomorrow. However, most of the rain should clear up Wednesday afternoon, and we should even have some sunshine tomorrow. Now, I know the south has been experiencing a dry monsoon, but the southern regions will have their rainy season all of next week. If we take a closer look at tomorrow's forecast, so when will the monsoon season end? There is a big chance that it will actually extend until early early August, so you expect a lot more rain. As for tomorrow's readings, Seoul will start off the morning at 24 and reach 30 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, cities in the south like Daegu and Busan will be hot and humid, peaking to 34 and 31 degrees respectively. Down on Jeju Island, the weather conditions are actually a little different under mostly sunny skies. Daejeon will hit 29, while Mount Kumgang tops off at 31. Well, that's all I have for you today. I'm Hannah Kim, and back to you guys.
And that wraps up the news for this hour. Thank you for watching. This has been Daniel Chen.
And I'm Moon Gonyang. Thank you, as always, for being here with us. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the evening, and we'll see you right back here same time tomorrow. Good night.